My wife betrayed me with a cop who thought he was untouchable. But what he didn't know was that I'm the kind of man who makes untouchable people disappear. When the dust settled, she discovered the monster she'd been sleeping next to, and it was already too late. The first thing you learn in special operations is that everyone lies. Your commanding officer lies about the mission parameters. The enemy lies about their surrender. Your government lies about what you did there. But the worst lies? Those come from the people who promise to love you when you come home. My name is Ethan Rivers, and I spent 12 years perfecting the art of making problems disappear. 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq, and several missions that exist only in classified files buried so deep they'll never see daylight. When I finally came home to Texas, I thought I was done with shadows and secrets. I was wrong. Clare Hayden was supposed to be my salvation. I met her at a charity gala her father was hosting. Judge Robert Hayden, a man whose reputation for integrity was matched only by his influence in state politics. Clare had honey-colored hair, emerald eyes that seemed to see straight through my carefully constructed civilian facade, and a laugh that made me forget the weight of every life I'd taken. She was everything I thought I wanted, pure, untainted by the darkness that had defined my adult life. We married 8 months later in a ceremony that looked like something from a magazine. White roses, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon, while 200 guests witnessed what they believed was a fairy tale beginning. Her father walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes, later toasting us with champagne that cost more than most people's monthly salary. "To Ethan," he said, raising his glass, "the man who finally made my daughter whole." If only he knew what kind of man he was welcoming into his family. For 3 years I played the role perfectly. Suburban husband, barbecue master, the guy who waved to neighbors and complained about property taxes. I bought Claire a golden retriever named Scout, renovated our kitchen twice, and attended her yoga studio's fundraising dinners with a smile that never quite reached my eyes. From the outside, we were the American dream incarnate. But dreams are fragile things, and mine began cracking the night I noticed Claire's phone lighting up with messages she was too quick to hide. It started with small inconsistencies. Her yoga classes that ran increasingly late. New lingerie that never made an appearance in our bedroom. A different perfume, something sultry and expensive that replaced her usual jasmine scent. Most husbands might have confronted their wives immediately, demanded explanations, made scenes. But I wasn't most husbands. I was a hunter, and hunters know patience. The confirmation came on a Tuesday night in October. Claire was in the shower and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from M that read, "Can't stop thinking about this afternoon. When can we do it again?" I didn't touch the phone. Didn't need to. The message told me everything while simultaneously telling me nothing. But that's the thing about being married to a professional killer. We notice everything, remember everything, and file it all away for later use. Instead of rage, I felt something colder settle in my chest. Clarity. Purpose. The same feeling I'd experienced in Kandahar when Intel finally revealed the location of a high-value target we'd been hunting for months. Over the following weeks, I began my surveillance. Not the sloppy, emotional stalking of a jealous husband, but methodical intelligence gathering. I tracked Claire's movements, documented her patterns, and gradually assembled a profile of her mysterious M. Mark Collins. 38, divorced, detective with the local police department. Clean record, commendations for community service, the kind of cop who probably still believed he was one of the good guys. He lived in a modest apartment complex on the west side of town, drove a 10-year-old Ford pickup, and had a weakness for bourbon and late-night poker games with his fellow officers. What he also had was terrible operational security. I watched them meet at a dive bar called Murphy's, where the beer was cheap and the lighting was dim enough to hide guilty consciences. Claire would arrive first, always choosing a corner booth with her back to the wall, a habit she'd picked up from me, ironically. Mark would follow 10 minutes later, scanning the room like he was worried someone might be watching. He should have been more worried. Their affair was textbook ordinary. Secret meetings, stolen kisses in parking lots, afternoon rendezvous at a motor lodge that rented rooms by the hour. Watching them together, I felt nothing. No jealousy, no heartbreak, just professional assessment. Claire was seeking excitement, danger, something to shatter the perfect suburban cage she'd helped build. Mark was providing it, playing the role of the forbidden lover with enthusiasm if not originality. But then I intercepted a phone call that changed everything. I'd planted listening devices in Mark's apartment, old habits die hard, and was monitoring his communications when his phone rang at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday. The caller's voice was older, gravelly, careful not to use names. "The judge signed off on the Morrison case," the voice said. "Payment's been transferred to the usual account." Mark's response chilled me. "What about the Rivers situation?" "Leave that to me. Man like that, he'll dig himself into a hole soon enough. Just keep the wife distracted." The line went dead, and I sat in my truck outside Mark's building, pieces clicking into place like ammunition sliding into a magazine. This wasn't just adultery. This was conspiracy, and somehow I was already part of it. Judge Robert Hayden. My father-in-law, the man who'd welcomed me into his family with open arms, who'd given speeches about justice and integrity at campaign fundraisers. The same man who, apparently, was signing off on cases for money. And Mark Collins wasn't just screwing my wife. He was part of whatever operation was using her to keep me distracted while they conducted their business. The question was, distracted from what? I spent the next week deep diving into Robert Hayden's recent court decisions, cross-referencing them with property transfers, business licenses, and financial records. What I found was a pattern of rulings that consistently favored a network of shell companies, all tracing back to one name that made my blood run cold. Vincent "Vince" Maddox. I knew that name from classified briefings, from whispered conversations in secure facilities, from intelligence reports that painted him as one of the most dangerous criminals operating in the American Southwest. Maddox didn't just run drugs or guns, he ran systems. He owned judges, senators, police chiefs, anyone with the power to make his problems disappear. And now apparently he owned my father-in-law. The night I decided to take action, Claire kissed me goodbye as she left for another girls' night out. I kissed her back, tasting lies on her lips, and told her to drive safely. She had no idea I'd already packed my gear: tactical clothing, zip ties, a suppressed Glock 19, and the knife I'd carried through 3 combat zones. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is emotional, cloudy, prone to mistakes. What I felt was the cold clarity of mission parameters finally clicking into place. The objective was simple: neutralize Mark Collins, extract intelligence, and trace the conspiracy to its source. Mark's apartment was a second-floor walk-up with thin walls and neighbors who minded their own business. Perfect for what I had planned. I waited until he returned from his shift, watched him settle into his evening routine through the window, then made my approach. He opened his door expecting Chinese takeout and found me instead. "Evening, detective," I said, stepping inside before he could react. "We need to talk." The beauty of military training is that it never really leaves you. Muscle memory kicked in as I secured the apartment, restrained Mark with professional efficiency, and positioned him in his own kitchen chair for interrogation. His initial bravado, the standard cop response to perceived threats, evaporated when he recognized the look in my eyes. "You know who I am?" I asked, settling into the chair across from him. He nodded slowly, fear replacing confusion. "Claire's husband." "That's the polite answer," I said. "But you called someone about the Rivers situation, which suggests you know more than you're letting on." Mark's face went pale. The conversation I'd intercepted wasn't as secure as he'd thought. "Here's how this works," I continued, my voice calm, professional. "You're going to tell me about your arrangement with Judge Hayden. You're going to explain Vince Maddox's involvement. And you're going to do it quickly, before I lose what little patience I have left." What followed was 2 hours of methodical intelligence extraction. Mark, to his credit, lasted longer than most before breaking completely. But everyone breaks eventually, it's just a matter of finding the right pressure points. By dawn I had everything I needed. Names, dates, financial records, the location of Maddox's primary operations center. More importantly, I understood the scope of what I was facing. This wasn't just local corruption. It was a carefully orchestrated criminal enterprise with tentacles reaching into state government. And Claire wasn't just collateral damage. She was bait, specifically chosen to keep me occupied while Maddox expanded his influence. Her father had introduced us, after all. The fairy tale romance had been a setup from the beginning. I left Mark alive, barely, and disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness. I had phone calls to make, old contacts to resurrect, favors to call in. Because Vincent Maddox had made one critical error in his calculations. He'd assumed I wanted to stay retired. The message came 3 days later, delivered to a secure phone number only 5 people in the world knew. No words, just an address and a time. The Old Pier District, midnight. I arrived early, of course, establishing overwatch positions and escape routes before settling into a sniper's hide with a clear view of the meeting point. Maddox arrived precisely on time, flanked by 2 bodyguards and accompanied by an unexpected guest. Clare. She was bound but unharmed, terror obvious even from my distant position. This was Maddox's play: force a confrontation by using my wife as leverage, assuming I still cared enough about her to risk everything for her safety. He was half right. I did care about Clare despite everything. But more than that, I cared about finishing what I'd started. Maddox represented everything I'd spent my military career fighting against: corruption, cruelty, the kind of evil that flourishes when good people do nothing. The conversation, when I finally revealed myself, was brief and predictable. Maddox offered me money, threatened consequences, attempted to negotiate. I let him talk while mentally calculating angles, distances, wind speed. "You could have stayed retired," he said finally, his voice carrying the weight of genuine regret. "But you had to come back into the darkness. And in the darkness I'm king." "You're wrong about that," I replied, and put 2 bullets in his chest before he could draw the weapon I'd spotted under his jacket. His bodyguards died next, their training insufficient for the reality of facing someone with my particular skill set. The entire engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. Claire clung to me afterward, sobbing, begging me to take her home. But home was an illusion, a lie we'd both participated in for different reasons. I walked her to the edge of the pier, where police sirens were already approaching. I'd called in an anonymous tip before the meeting. "There is no home," I told her, meaning it. "Not for either of us anymore." I was in the air before the police finished processing the crime scene, bound for a destination that existed only in encrypted communications and off-the-books intelligence budgets. The phone call came as we reached cruising altitude. "Mr. Rivers," a woman's voice said, professional and precise. "We've been monitoring your situation. There are others like Maddox out there, worse than him in fact. We'd like your help removing them from the board." I looked out at the darkness below, at the lights of cities where people slept peacefully, unaware of the predators moving in the shadows around them. "Send me the files," I said. "Some men are born to build things, homes, families, legacies of love and hope. Others are forged to tear down what shouldn't exist, to walk in darkness so others can live in light. I tried to be the first kind of man. Failed spectacularly. But the second kind? That's what I'd always been, what I'd always be. And somewhere in the darkness below, the next mission was already waiting.